So I just watched the Looney Tunes Show, and it got me in the mood for hunting some wabbits. But unlike Elmer Fudd, I'm actually going to finish the job. Oh hi! Welcome to So I Just Watched, the show that is a revival itself. I know, for some of you that may be a bit hard to believe, but 4-episode survival existed as its own little thing before I had to reformat it and retool it into what you see today. Weird to think that was 2 years ago though. Jesus Christ. Anyway, let's look at the Looney Tunes Show, a unique turn into the 21st century for an icon of American animation. This video was never intended to be the final one released in my Looney Tunes review trilogy, but something had to take a backseat to the Space Jams that required my more immediate attention for obvious reasons, and it ended up being something that many people forgot even existed in the first place. The commercial failure of Back in Action put the Toon franchise on ice. The WB had to think outside the box to bring them into their 80th year and give them a new generation to be loved by. So how did they do it? Well, an original pilot was created that was so poorly received by executives that the entire crew who made it was laid off. Wow, that scene from Back in Action wasn't just a piece of narrative and character progression. Heyo! A link to that uncut pilot is in the description for those who are interested to watch it because, it's something, that's all I'm gonna say on that front. After that went over, as well as reminding me that I am bald, they returned from the drawing board with what Looney Tunes Show would become. A show that settled the wackiest and looniest of all cartoons into the dross of upper-middle-class sitcom suburbia. That sentence may have made some of you die inside, but it wouldn't have lasted for over 3 years, 2 seasons, 52 episodes and a TV movie if it wasn't the least bit popular and good, right? I mean, they did something that was as unpopular now as it was a decade ago, redesigning the confident Lola and making her into a scatterbrained airhead. How times have changed, good lord. Either way, critical opinion is divided on a show that passed many by, including myself, and that's why So I Just Watched exists, for me to dip the toe in and see whether this is an overlooked diamond in the rough or a well-deserved forgotten relic. Let's find out which of these options is true. I have to make note of one major point that the clips you may have seen online of this show fail to really bring attention to. It has more than just the core episode in its 22-minute runtime. Yeah, each episode contains either one of or both of 2 things: a CGI Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner skit, and a musical number. This show did what the 2020 Animaniacs did almost a decade prior, and yes, they actually took the original short's header, Merry Melodies, and made it literal. Who the hell thought that was a good idea? I am fully aware that they were contractually obliged to include a chorus from a Warner Brothers penned song in the good old days of the golden era of animation, but a whole original song? Someone must have really wanted to take the property in a new direction, and it flagrantly shows that. Either way, the first major problem is the pacing. The Merry Melody musical numbers are the breather from the episode's core central plots, which, under standard Looney Tunes convention, are between 6 to 10 minutes long. You'd have thought, oh, 22-minute episodes, that would include 2 of them, like most standard cartoons. Well, you would be mistaken. How happy would you be if you received double the length of a standard short for one narrative? It's a new show with a new format, so I'd be amiss if I wasn't going to at least give it the benefit of the doubt on that. However, given that all of these new episodes stretch their plots to breaking point to utilise that allotted time is frankly torturous, as any sense of enjoyment is slowly worn out of you whilst watching a series of painfully predictable stories, unremarkable animation, apathetically unfunny humour, laboured and dense writing, oh wait, that's 4 major problems on top of the dreadful and wasteful pacing slowing down the entire experience to worse than a crawl. And that's before we even get to the meat and potatoes of what the episodes themselves contain. On a structural level, what this show offers is as unstable as an ant perched over a sinkhole. It's going to fall into the abyss sooner than later, and you do not want to be there when it happens. Premiere episode Best Friends sees Bugs and Daffy enter a game show where the Black Duck's lack of awareness of anyone other than himself is played for conflict, where constant irritation and embarrassment is fumbled all over the place, to where you just sit there annoyed at how absent-minded and dumb these characters are. Speedy Gonzalez's intervention tries to knock some sense into Daffy, only for him to flip a 180 and, well, continue the trailblazing cesspool of annoyance to where by the end, he hasn't learned anything, which means it's a complete waste of time. The Merry Melody musical number sees Elmer Fudd singing a love song about how he does doomy eyes to a grilled cheese. After seeing such lifeless dreck beforehand, this was as shocking a left turn that I have ever seen. A song so terribly bad and nonsensical that it actually became funny just because I had been absolutely devoid of entertainment up until that point. I honestly can't believe that this was the episode's saving grace, and it makes me feel sick. Also, there were these Stewie Griffin-esque mice, and the less said about them the better. Although I will give this episode some credit, the Superman parody was surprisingly chuckle-inducing, which I did not see coming, although it just felt a bit forced for my liking. Second episode Members Only introduces us to the new Lola, quote-unquote on new, bringing a clean slate to her and Bugs' relationship to intriguingly occupy our time whilst Daffy cons his way into and around a country club. While the airheaded Lola initially is quite hilarious given the U-turn from the norm, irritating in the funniest way, it slowly devolves into painful psychopathic territory where all enjoyment just evaporates into the ether. Even the sight of Bugs cross-dressing to try and convince Lola to break up with him, the most Looney Tunes thing that I've seen up until this point, doesn't liven up proceedings. Lola's parents are roped in, a rushed and misunderstood marriage proposal occurs, and Lola then runs off with Pepe Le Pew on the altar. This all occurred as Daffy is mostly forgotten about in the background, because watching him play mahjong with some old ladies qualified as entertainment in this show, proving just how unremarkable everything really is. That and his unbearable personality that carried over from the first episode is quite difficult to stomach on a comedic level because it isn't funny. At least he got some comeuppance having to pay off the tab that he had accrued, so at least this has something the prior episode didn't, even though it was really uncomfortable to sit through to get to that lone beacon of narrative stability. Merry Melodies this time saw Marvin the Martian talk about himself with arguably the best animation quality in this entire thing so far. Going from those plain backgrounds to this was a nice wake-up call, but the awful lyrics make you question your life choices upon the realization this is almost certainly Marvin's dating video. I did not want to have to imagine what this guy did when he's not invading planets. We also got the only Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner segment of this entire lot. Strange and lifeless 3D gives us exactly what we'd expect from these two. I'm unmoved because I realised that adding an extra segment onto the overall episode really implies just how hollow the plot was between Lola and Bugs and the country club, given that it had barely enough substance to cover the time that the others did. Hopefully this gives you more of an inkling as to why stretching such wafer-thin plots over 22 minutes is a really bad idea. Surely things can improve, right? Third episode, Jailbird and Jail Bunny had the opportunity to do so, but instead of giving me some life, it broke me in half like a twig. How fundamentally frustrating and angrily unfunny could this show get? Any response you give me is not even close to what this episode offered up. Try sending both Daffy and Bugs to prison, only for the latter to not only enjoy it, but upon both of them escaping, wants to turn himself in. I'm sorry, I know Daffy showed himself to be unbearable to be around in the first episode, but surely not even the wise, cunning and crafty Bugs Bunny is that desperate to not have to wait hand on foot for him. Then again, this isn't the same universe as standard Looney Tunes, so it's apparently fine for this Bugs to do so, and that realization makes you want to do what Elmer Fudd never did in the series outright, and it would probably be more entertaining than this tiresome drivel. The diametric opposite sees Daffy lose his mind in the joint, and well, While that should create some schism to drive the conflict forward and get some hilarious comedy out of it, it just made you want to bash your head against the wall, because this was not a rambunctious body comedy. I will give this episode some credit though. Porky Pig, yes, he's in this episode too by the way, is nearly arrested for not wearing any trousers, so he buys some in the court gift shop, a place that Bugs told him would have some when they were at the Grand Canyon during the pre-intro. How that minor joke-based continuity made me smile more than nearly 19 minutes of Bugs and Daffy being in prison should be damning to just how unfunny and terrible this episode was. It was the worst of the four by a country mile, to where any attempts at humour and plot advancement is so sterilised that I just wanted it to end as soon as possible, but it just kept on going. And I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm already dead inside and we haven't even gotten to the 4th episode. And the merry melody, for those of you who wanted to know? Yosemite Sam telling his life story and how angry he is, set to music. I've got nothing, because at this point, I felt nothing. And Fish and Visitors comes round with Sam now being a more prominent role in the series, gate-crashing Bugs and Daffy's abode as this show, conveniently for plot reasons, does not know how solar panels work, and his disregard for his neighbour's goodwill is what drives it forward. And I will say, in a positive note, this was the best episode of the bunch, but that really doesn't actually equate to anything. Because the sight of the state that Sam left Bugs' bathroom in was the biggest laugh I had during the entire 90 or so minutes I had watching this show. And oh my god, the humour was just so on the nose and painfully, transparently delivered. The fake-out attempts to get Sam out of the house were awful, and by the end of it, I just lost all sense of the ability to care for whatever this show was assigning as fun. What this episode offered up as an example of fun was Bugs, Daffy and Sam standing next to a microwave avoiding small talk for nearly 30 uninterrupted seconds. This is as far removed from Looney Tunes as you can get, as an example of just why so many avoided this show like the plague. The final merry melody sees that small brown chick and Foghorn Leghorn, making me really at least relieved that we might find something entertaining, because Foghorn Leghorn never ceases to make me laugh by just talking. But even that was handicapped, because it made me contemplate my own existentialism as the former, that little brown little chick, wanted to actually eat chicken. And it flashed up Foghorn Leghorn as a cooked chicken. What kind of eldritch dimension is this show occupying? Oh, I did chuckle that it was at least some self-awareness of the existence of Foghorn being a shill advertising KFC in the 80s, but the idea of that chick wanting to eat his own kind, it's just such a strange thing to be singing about. I don't understand. Were these guys on drugs when they made this? I honestly don't know. Oh god, if there was one good thing that I can say about this show, based on my 4-episode sample, is that the voice acting is pretty damn great. They all do quite well to at least try and make the gruel they were given to read be somewhat palatable. Speedy Gonzalez and Lola, voiced by Fred Armisen and Kristen Wiig, holy shit, respectively, put in star performances that made me treasure their appearances, but it's arguably the only real positive I can fall back on for a show that somehow lasted more time on air in terms of years shown than Gravity Falls. And I bet that is a very hard, stern fact for you to hear. So after all that, would I recommend the Looney Tunes Show? Absolutely not. This is bad. Catastrophically bad. So bad, in fact, I wouldn't even recommend it to my worst enemy. Considering I don't actually have one, good for me, but you get the point. If you were not aware of this being the outcome, I do not know where the hell you've been for the last 14 to 15 minutes of the video. Seriously. In the build up to making this video, I'd read the horror stories from friends and others in the animation sphere about how bad this show was, and I was thinking, there's no way it could be that bad. Well, I've been burnt before by those kinds of assumptions, and I wish I could get back the near 1.5 hours I spent ingesting some truly terrible animated television. There's taking a left turn, and then there's doing so careening off the motorway in the process. That is a Looney Tunes show in a nutshell. In an effort to revitalise an establishment name for a new audience, the heart and soul of Looney Tunes was vacuumed out, leaving us with episodes that were so overly long, slower than a snail cosplaying as Sonic running underwater in Labyrinth Zone, constituting wastelands of such little, unsatisfying substance to not even amoeba could cobble together a feast. Pretty much all the plot threads featured advance or progress pretty much nothing more than frustration and irritation, with new versions of beloved characters whose abrasive tendencies long overstayed their welcome, producing us such really unfunny comedy that you're left there with just a blank expression on your face before it turns into a grimace, wondering how you ended up in this position watching this tripe. I honestly wish that I could never have watched this show, so hopefully this is a massive flag to wave, bearing a warning to be heeded. If the 2-minute musical interludes, which were not very good anyway, are the best things here, then you know you're better off never laying your eyes on this of your own free will. If you do, then congratulations! You're much more of a masochist than I ever will be. Overall, this is the worst show that I have reviewed and critiqued on So I Just Watched so far, and I do not even want to dare think what could be worse. And don't you even think of suggesting them in the comment section, because I am probably not going to look at them. Unless someone pays me for the privilege, of course. Either way, for the love of God, do not watch this show. If you do, your life will be worse off because of it. I've been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching, this is the CC Network, and I will see you all next time.